I'm committed to growing my business.
You have a following, but I don't have this.
Are you marching? Are you breathing?
Okay, so let's start. Yeah. Well, I already watched the full season, and I have to tell you, congratulations, it's amazing. Aww. But speaking in the name of the audience, what can we expect from this second season?
Well, I think the season really opens up, and I think you get to explore a lot more of the lives of the other characters around Sheila. So it's less of an internal debate and struggle of this kind of fight that she's having, and more of the external world around her, and also Sheila's fight with the external world, like whether it's within her marriage and finally speaking up, or within the business and trying to like climb the ranks and being told to stay in your lane. I feel like this season really does open up. Is a good way to
100%. Yeah.
Pitch it.
In the first season, you have to set up so many storylines. You have to introduce so much information, and now we've been able to set all the characters sort of on their own tracks, and they can really kind of ride the waves and see tracks and waves. That's a terrible mix. Really see where they kind of journey to, however they get there.
Yeah.
Yes. So, season 1, we saw a lot of Sheila kind of battling internal demons, and season 2 really sees her starting to take on the world. So it's about going from that internal struggle to the external struggle of achieving success. Okay,
well, your character is new in this season, so the first thing I want to know is, how was this call when they told you, do you want to play him?
Well, I got a beautiful letter from Annie Weisman, the creator of the show, explaining the character and how the character would be kind of woven into the second season, and it just sounded fantastic to me. First of all, I'm a huge fan of the show, so before I even got that letter and I knew that this was a possibility, I was thrilled, because I think the show is really brilliant. I found it funny and confronting, and just beautifully made, beautifully written. I think the cast is fantastic, and I've always been a huge fan of Rose Byrne, and a lot of my stuff was going to be with Rose. So I kind of was screaming yes inside even before I'd heard about the character. And then Vinnie Green is this. I mean, in the way that Annie described him, is just this, fun character, 80s aerobics, inspired by those sort of fitness gurus of that time, which I, being a child of the 80s, or the sort of a teenager in the 80s, teenager in the 80s, have really strong memories of those kind of figures. So, I knew it was going to be really fun. But then in the way that Annie described him, he's a complex character, like Rose, like Sheila Rubin, Rose's character, who has, sort of a split personality in a way, and that the way that he presents publicly is quite different from who he is privately. So I found that really fascinating. Added to it the fact that in his work, he's added to this, this aerobics, fitness instructor, weight loss guru type thing. This real sort of emphasis on the personal and connecting with people. And I found that fascinating, that he really has built his thing on really connecting with people on an emotional level, and yet reveals very little of who he is personally and emotionally. I thought that was a really fascinating, character.
Okay, so how have your characters changed?
Greta had such a wonderful and wild journey in the first season that it was nice to get to explore some of those themes a little bit more. Greta really gets to have some agency in this season, be her own person, and be a little sexy, which was a lot of fun. I have a great acting partner, Ian Gomez, who makes all that stuff really fun and funny. So, yeah.
Yeah, you get to do a lot of raunchy stuff.
Sexy.
Yeah. And so do I, actually, for that matter. I mean,
Exactly.
Sheila, sex is definitely on the mind in season 2. Yeah, Sheila embarks on a very dangerous affair, which is really just another secret life that she's replacing her eating disorder with, and this sort of access to a guy who has power, which is something she wants and sees and thinks she needs and wants to understand. And that's really, I feel like, what that is sort of about.
I think it's less ego. I think he's less, more self-aware, less ego-driven. I think it's I don't even know if it's necessarily a personal choice that he's made to be less egotistical. It seems like the situation he's in of losing the election and sort of getting put in his place has caused him to sort of just face the facts. And those facts are that he doesn't have a job and he's making no money, and his wife happens to be crushing it at the same time. So I think my character's growth was one of more internal, trying to figure out how to maybe actually be present as a father now, and maybe step back and actually try to figure out what he wants to do with his life and who he wants to become. And I think it sort of led him down a road where he got to see a more personal side of his wife, not one that he necessarily is happy to find out, but, you know, he finally wasn't paying attention to just himself.
Why? I mean, the season ends in a kind. I won't do any spoilers, but it ends in a kind of an open ending. So,
Yeah.
will the TV show have a longer future?
Well, we certainly hope so. We have a lot more stories to tell with her, and I think her journey from, you know, what we saw at the very beginning of the season as a woman who was really trapped in this unfulfilling marriage and this unfulfilling life and this bad relationship to her body. You know, she's still in a journey of becoming. So we see a lot of growth this season. We see her embracing recovery, but we also see her, you know, not able to outrun some of her mistakes and demons. And so there's still a lot more growth and recovery to do.
And which one would you say is their biggest challenge for each one?
Challenge. Well, I think Sheila's quote-unquote recovery is very interesting to look at, because you sort of meet her and she's in it, but she's sort of a false recovery, and then it really, you know, everything starts to crumble again and she relapses, and then the real kind of harder work starts toward the end of the season. And that was very important to track that and how that looked, because I have a lot of friends who are former addicts or recovering from ADs or still struggling with them, and it's a long road.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think for Greta, I think she goes through what maybe a lot of women and mothers in this country go through, which is no one ever asks her what she wants. And so this is the first season where she actually gets to be like, what do I want? And then, like, it's really hard for her to think about and figure out. But, you know, navigating that, I think that was her biggest change and challenge. Yeah.
I think knowing that there's friction between Sheila and Danny as the season progresses, I have to say that's kind of a strange challenge, because in both seasons for the bulk of the show, while not being in the greatest relationship, I personally did feel like there was something for these two to really justify their marriage and their relationship and how they got this far. And I got to say, as that, you know, starts to deteriorate as the season goes on, it's kind of challenging to step into a scene where you're now supposed to feel, you know, very differently about this person, because you now have this personal conflict with the relationship.
A retribution.
Annihilation.